We are the generation that has learned the universe is a developing reality. Up until our time, we regarded the universe as a place inside of which things changed. So this is the massive shift from cosmos to cosmogenesis. Massive shift. And the way to take in what's going on is to think of Copernicus. Copernicus had this radical theory that we live on a round planet that is circling a star. I mean, when you think about the number of civilizations in ancient, stories about the Earth being a flat region with a bowl of stars above it, and that everyone took this as obvious, that the Earth was this fixed place at the very center of the universe. Didn't move. Other things moved. Earth was set. And then some guy shows up and he's saying, no. It said, we're on a planet that's flying through space. I mean, just try to imagine how hard that was to take in. And apparently, if you look at the internet, there are a number of people that haven't yet really accepted it, still hanging on to that flat Earth theory. Why not? That's the way it worked for our ancestors. Let's stick with it. But I'm not trying to make fun of them, but I'm just trying to come home to the challenge before us. And just like Copernicus, they had all these objections to what he was saying. They say, what do you mean the Earth is spinning? If it were spinning, then the Atlantic Ocean would be washing over Europe. That doesn't make any sense. And besides, we watch the stars come up every night, and they go across the sky every night. You see, so that that's what we have. We have to think about what it means to be a developing being inside a developing universe. One way to think about this is to reflect on how we tend to think of humans as always sort of like us, like we know more, and we have lots of technology, and we've built cities, but we think of ourselves as being human, from the start. But actually, that's not the case. That we thought differently in the past. Our imaginations were different. So to really take in that we are this flowing energy inside of a flowing energy. That's the big challenge before us. Now, when I say it's going to change things more than Copernicus, just think of this. John Locke is the principal political philosopher of the modern era. Adam Smith is the principal economist of the modern era. We have built institutions on their thinking, and they knew nothing about what I'm talking about. They simply did not know that we were inside of a changing, developing reality. So it's a formidable task we have before us. All of our institutions are in this moment of transition, and we hardly know what we're doing. It's chaotic, and that's the nature of change in the cosmogenesis. The chaos accompanies these transitions. But it's really important for us to take the long view, because even though we're incensed by the massive stupidity of certain actions taking place, that will continue so long as we live in this idea of a fixed universe and a fixed human. So cosmogenesis is the story of the birth and development of the universe, and of the role Humanity has to live out as part of this. And that's what that role is. That's what we need to figure out. So now we move to the other term, this other massive idea, noosphere. Noosphere. The word, first of all, let's start with the word. It comes from the Greek word mind and sphere. And the word was invented exactly 100 years ago by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. We're celebrating this with a conference in the San Francisco Bay Area in the middle of November. We haven't yet figured out who the speakers are and all that, but it's we're trying to find a way to wake up humanity to this radical idea of the noosphere. So what is the noosphere? To begin, just picture the birth of the earth. So we have this accretion of atoms that form the solar system. All of those atoms came from a supernova explosion. Some of them collapsed into the earth. So that as they collapsed, the heat grew, the temperature grew. And so the early earth was molten rock, really. And so that we refer to as the geosphere. And then as the mixing that was taking place in this boiling molten rock, it would release gases, so that we were building, the earth was building an atmosphere. And then the next transition was when the various minerals of the earth actually came together and invented life. And life spread around the planet, the biosphere. Life began maybe 3.9 billion years ago. For 3 billion years, it remained unicellular. And then they had this amazing moment of giving birth to the animals and the plants. Say they spread around the earth, and we call it the biosphere. And now we come to our moment. The emergence of the human species has led to a form of thinking that is different. It's qualitatively different than the form of thinking that was present throughout the animal kingdom. And that the form of thinking uses symbols. And we could go into that, but I just to fix it in your mind, that it was a new and powerful form of thinking that led to a rapid expansion of the human all around the planet. And the thinking of these humans linked up and became a network that became in charge of the evolution of a planet. Even before we realized what was happening, we had created this sphere of thought that was made, that sphere of thought was responsible for actions that were altering the planet on the level of millions of years. So we find ourselves right in the midst of this. It took a genius like Teilhard to actually notice it and give it a name. And so now we have the challenge and the thrill of bringing forth a more amazing noosphere. And I've described it now as a sphere of thought, as a network of thinking. Another way of speaking of it is it's a unified humanity. A unified humanity. And just, I know that the idea of thinking of humanity as being unified is extremely difficult, given the antagonisms we have around in our country and around the planet. But it is if we look back over the last 100,000 years, we find a sequence of unifications, just like in a sentence. 100,000 years ago, we lived in small bands of a couple dozen humans. And then 15,000 years ago, these bands actually began to understand each other well enough to form villages of several thousand. And a few thousand years ago, the villages grew, and we had the ability to actually unite millions of humans in cities. This nothing like this has taken place in the 70 million years of primate evolution. Nothing like this. It's ontologically new. And so we're shuddering here at this moment of moving beyond the nation state era into this vibrant, pulsing earth community with the unified Homo sapiens. So those are the two great words of our time.
Thank you, Brian. That was just an amazing overview right there, Brian. That was just beautiful.
That's pretty much all I have to say, Jennifer.
Oh, no.
If people have to go home now, they've got it all.
We'll come back shortly to the significance of these insights, but I wanted to, because this comes out of science, a lot of this, everything comes out of science with these huge breakthroughs and understanding. And in your book, Cosmogenesis, you talk about science as a holy search, And I can guess what you mean by that, but can you say more about what you mean about science as a holy search?
Yes, I can. And this idea as well goes back to Teilhard de Chardin, and his word was science is worship. Science is worship. I mean, I should probably science can be worship. That can be a number of things, but in Teilhard's view, which I love, the highest calling of science is a holy act. What is it? What does that mean? When we think about the human species, there are these fundamental urges and desires and drives. They're who we are. We're our lives are articulations of the yearning and longing and desires that we discover in our existence. And the one that relates to science is a fundamental desire to know the nature of reality. And we see this with young children. I mean, they want to know what's going on. They ask the why question. It goes on forever, especially when they're 4 years old. It's just, where am I? What am I doing? Who, where's mom? Where's dad? All of these questions. So the other animals, in a certain sense, have that sense of curiosity, but they also have a deep wisdom that is carried by the DNA. The other animals have worked out a wisdom that enables them to participate in their communities, their ecosystems, in mutually enhancing ways. They've done that, but we're so recent. We don't have a understanding of ourselves mapped out. We're in search of it, and that search is behind the whole enterprise of science. Einstein's view of science was the recapitulation of the universe in conceptual form. I thought that's such a great, that's what science is about.
That's beautiful.
It's discovery of the story of the universe in mathematical symbols in the English language. That's what we're about. So really the notion of science being a holy quest is associated with the idea of the incarnation. So it's so that the view of many of us here is that there's something sacred about the very nature of the universe. Just the universe being itself is a sacred event, and our participation in that, in a very fundamental way, is to discover what it is the universe is doing. The universe will continue to do what it's doing, but for whatever reason, it now requires that process to be articulated in human consciousness. So that's what I would say. It's not, I don't think it's the only primordial dimension of humanity. I'm not saying that, but it is one of them. This discovery of this search for what is taking place, what is happening.
So in your book, Brian, you spend a lot of time, I mean, it's about your personal story. And a big part of it must be at least a third of the book, you talk about your career in science and teaching science as a mathematical cosmologist, but you had to leave mainstream science in order to inquire into the significance of science. I just find that kind of an amazing story. You had to leave the mainstream in order to really inquire into the significance of it. What can you say about that?
Well, it was an extremely difficult decision. It's just extremely difficult. It took me years to finally accept it. And the way I understand it now is that there's nothing I love more than mathematical physics and mathematical cosmology. And why would I step out of that? And one way to say it is that the scientific endeavor has gone through phases, and if we take science in a general, more general sense, you go back to Aristotle, a brilliant biological scientist. So it was a great form of science. And then when we got into the modern period, it became more mathematical. So we had a mathematical or even a mechanical form of science. And we're changing again. We're changing again. Going back to Penny's point, we're developing a science that begins with the whole. So the holistic science. And looking back on my life, I would say that on some level, I realized that I would not be able to move forward in my quest to understand the universe if I remained inside the context of mathematical science.
Right.
There's sometimes you need to leave the context to get a bigger view of it. And the name, I mentioned holistic science. Sometimes it's called complexity science. It's not as if I know what is going to take place, but I just know the transition is happening. But my favorite phrase for it is from Thomas Berry. And that is this. He says, we are entering the wisdom phase of modern science. I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Because during the modern period, get the mathematical equations, that was everything, right? But now we're asking, how does this knowledge fit into the whole Earth community, even into the whole universe?
Absolutely. So in this view, of the whole, And we move to a radically different understanding of causation and agency because we're looking at the whole now. How does the noosphere fit into that picture of moving from the individual to the whole?
Oh, that is a great question. Yeah. I wish I had thought of that while I was answering the last one, but this is because this is so fundamental. So the image of causation throughout the modern period was that of atoms colliding. So it's called the billiard ball explanation. And so we wanted so much to understand something by reducing it down to the movement of particles and atoms. And so let me give you an example. If I'm studying something like a billiard ball and I see it moving by me, all right, and I want to understand why is that billiard ball moving by me that fast? Well, I know, as you know, this is the point of view of the form of causation in modern science. I know that something in the past happened. Something bounced into it or something. It was something in the past that happened that caused this billiard ball to move forward like that. But now with the noosphere, with the idea of the noosphere, we have a different understanding of causation. And that is the future is involved in the activities of the present. Now, if you happen to be a scientist, I know you're probably choking right now. And if you have friends that are scientists, don't even tell them what I just said, because this idea of the future as having power is outside of mathematical cosmology. It goes outside of Darwinian biology. It's a different, new, powerful idea. And Teilhard wasn't the only person to think this way, but he's the one we're celebrating. And of course, there's a difference between the past and the future, for sure. I'm not saying they're identical, but in your own experience, if you reflect on your lives and just ask, well, what was the cause of that action? You'll find, or you know instantly, that many times it's an image of what you want to have happen. That or maybe you come across something that strikes, that it gives you an idea. It's an image of what could be the future that is the cause of the action in the moment. Now, Teilhard is generalizing that. He is saying that the universe yearns to move forward in different ways. The whole is real. Immanuel Kant, that's what he's saying. The whole is real. And so I am interpreting the yearning I feel inside my experience as coming, at least in part, from the future. So when I say that the universe is yearning for a unified humanity, that would be an example of my interpretation of my own experience in terms of a cause arising from the future. And I just think that it's just a fantastic new way of thinking, you know. And I especially think of young people. I mean, the youth of our time, they're just, not all, but so many of them are committing suicide and the violence. I mean, I'm not trying to blame it just on the youth. I'm trying to say for something real. And if they could begin to understand that deep in their experience is the universe drawing them into their fundamental role, a role that is unique to them. That's the thing, that idea that the universe in its future form is calling to us, and that the universe is actually has unique and particular roles for every entity. That idea takes us out of modern science into the wisdom of science.
Yeah, beautiful. So looking at your own personal life, Brian, when you met Matthew Fox and you met Thomas Berry, I mean, that meeting utterly altered your life, utterly altered your life. And just, following up on the idea of what you were just talking about, that the future, was calling forth something to happen in your life. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at you meeting, Matthew Fox and Thomas Berry, I know this sounds kind of grandiose, but I really do think of it this way, that was a cosmic event. That was a cosmic event, you meeting Matthew Fox and meeting Thomas Berry. And it's making a difference, it's making a difference. So just putting those ideas together, what you were just talking about with the future calling forth something to happen in the present, and then looking at your own life and its impact beyond your life.
Excuse me. I should have muted that. I'm so sorry. I just didn't get to the mute button fast enough.
We can handle it, Brian.
Well, yeah, Matthew Fox and Thomas Berry, these two, giants of world history, really, and they for me, it was a cosmic event meeting them. That's one of my favorite short chapters. They met, and I was there, and they could only talk about Hildegard of Bingen. It was just too much. It was so beautiful. In the moment, I didn't understand everything that was going on, but I knew something really important was going on. I just felt it, right? It was just. But I just to say a few things about what they mean to me. I mean, Matthew Fox, one of his fundamental ideas is that Christianity has been taken over by a fall redemption spirituality, so that it took creation, it took the universe, and built a fundamental distrust in our minds concerning the universe. So if you have a very intensely fall redemption orientation, to hear someone like myself speak of the universe in the future calling us forward is nonsense, because there isn't that. You can't trust something that's in a fallen state, and so it was Matt Fox was for me a great liberator of myself and many others in this sense of all of the scholars and the poets and the thinkers that he brought together, all affirming one idea: we can trust the universe.
Yeah,
it's trustworthy. We can trust the universe. So that was just, it was a great liberation. And then Thomas Berry, he really, not just in my opinion here, but I think he was the first person to understand that this story of the universe was going to change everything. I mean, even though he learned a lot from Teilhard doesn't emphasize the story the way Thomas does. Thomas thought it through from various cultures, and he always was thinking in terms of the whole. And so the story of our development has this gigantic role to play in this major transition we're going through. Yeah, so they were for me and for so many others a cosmic event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly was for me. And I'm sure so many people in this room right here would say the same. Yeah, just ripple effects throughout our lives and throughout communities. Yeah. So speaking of the future, can we, vision ahead, let's say 2,000 years? to the year 4023. Imagine that, everybody, 4023. Brian, what can you imagine planet Earth to be? And of course, there are many different scenarios, but what's that future that's helping to shape the present from that far ahead? How can we think about that?
I think it's really important to reflect on the future, and at the same time, I think we need to remember that the future is going to surprise us. It's going to be something so totally different from what we expect. And so I mean, this a playful way of at least expressing how I think about it is to just imagine, if you go back in life 500 million years, and you're in touch with some of these unicellular organisms. So I mean, here's what science has learned. These little organisms, each one smaller than the sharp end of a pin, they got together, they deepened their relationships, and over in veils. Now it's almost preposterous. They had, I mean, and just think of how complex the whale is, the brain of the whale, the experience, the psychic nature of the whale. All of that came from tiny cells coming together and forming relationships. Eyesight, right? They invented eyesight. They invented the heart. So nothing came from the outside is the main point I'm trying to emphasize. Nothing came from the outside. And this didn't involve calculations and thinking. It was deeper than that. And I've already said the phrase, but just to say it again, is that all that happened was that they deepened their relationships. So this idea of this is one of the great gifts. I regard this as something as important as the sacred scriptures of different cultures, that the ultimate creativity of the universe is evoked through relationship. So in terms of what the future will be like, all I can really say, I've already given you my main view, is that it will be a unified humanity within the Earth community. And exactly what that means, well, that I think we'll have to discover it. But what I want to say about the future is that it will come forth primarily by humans deepening their bond and relationship with one another. We don't know what will come up out of our relationships. We can't know. If we can remember how we can stay in that state of astonishment in our deeper relationships, and to realize that we don't really know this other person completely, because this other person is coming forth, and the stunning fact is this other person is coming forth in a unique way because of us. They'll be coming forth in a different way with others. So it's like logical thrill of finding ourselves right there at the core fire of the universe's unfolding.
So isn't that kinship?
So
coming back to the idea.
Yes, it is. There's kinship.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Global kinship.
Global kinship.
And the noosphere, comes in here in a big way, because we can now form this kinship relationship with humans all over the planet. Not a whole bunch at once, but some. we can be in communication with them. We can be writing emails to someone in Iran, and you know, even if you've never been there, you can establish this relationship in it. I mean, it's just imagine 90,000 years ago, the human being was identical to us, same body size, same brain. 90,000 years ago, they go through their entire lifetime and see 30 people. I mean, and I'm sure it was a good 30 people. I'm sure they had a great time. You know what I mean? But the kind of diversity that's possible, it enables a creativity that simply couldn't happen in the past. That's the noosphere in action.
So we've seen in the, you know, the cosmic story, the way crises come up and then somehow the universe addresses it and breaks through. And we are coming to these insights now, right when we have these crises we're facing, climate change, and, you know, pollution, so many crises across the planet. So, I mean, this seems this seems cosmic itself, right? To have
Absolutely,
happening at the time when we are gaining these insights. What can you say about that?
Just that that in the history of life, to say it in a rhetorical fashion, let me just say it this way: that every ecosystem is filled with mortal enemies. You know, the hawk and the mouse. I mean, the mouse has got to get away from that hawk, or it's going to be eaten. And the hawk is, you know, intensely upset by the speed of the mouse. But it's this tension, this creative tension, that gives rise to the excellence of the hawk and the excellence of the mouse. We